to keep in mind wherever you need, and that's something that should motivate you to come to study the Quran and read it. As someone who's looking for guidance, who want to make sure that you are on the right path. As someone who several times a day asks Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for guidance. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. I mean, the biggest part of Surah Al-Fatiha is about asking Allah to guide you to the right path. So, and never fall in the trap of shaitan that because I'm Muslim, so I'm already on the right path and I'm already guided. And they don't need really to worry much about the direction. I know it. I don't need to study the Quran or to learn because I know what I'm supposed to do and I'm doing it, so I'm fine. That's wrong. That's a trap of shaitan. That's not the proper attitude of a believer. And if you fall in that trap, you will never have any incentive to learn or to improve or to study the Quran or the model of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So you have to resist that whisper of shaitan that you are on, you should be on a path of continuous improvement until you meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if there is a setback in that path, then you have to recover and repent and move on, always trying to move up in your ranking and in your status with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The other part of the Quran, which is the other essential part of the Quran, or role, is Quran is preparing you as an individual and preparing us, all of us as a community, to carry that huge, humongous mission. There is a big mission that we are supposed to carry, and therefore Quran is always trying to prepare us individually and collectively in a different way. Sometimes it sketches the profile of the believer with whom Allah is pleased. And the community we have seen just in the previous verses have استعينوا بالصبر والصلاة. Seek help in prayer and patience. Seek help for what? Seek help to carry that mission and to fulfill it. And then وَلَنَبْلُونَكُمْ. Why these trial and tribulation? Why you're going to be tested? To become stronger. Because it's the tests that makes people stronger. It's not necessarily punishment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then telling us about al-birr, the most recent verse. And also the rulings, what is halal, what is haram. All of these is to sharpen you and shape you up for that big and humongous mission to fulfill. So Quran, you can think of it like, when you have an artist who spends weeks and months and maybe more on a piece of art, and every time they add a little thing here and improve something there and fix something here to create that impressive and perfect piece of art. وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثَلُ الْأَعْلَى. That's what Quran is doing with us. It's basically, when also if you have like a coach or coaching staff preparing a team for the huge tournament or preparing an athlete for a major competition, they work on every little details. You go to the gym to work on some muscles, and then they work on your speed, they work on your every aspect of the game or every aspect of the competition, especially those who are competing for the medals and for the gold, and for those who have they're competing to be the best, and that's what Muslims are supposed to be role models, to be people who change the world. And that's why it worked. The formula worked with the companions. The formula worked very nicely with the companions, that the Quran transformed them. They took it very seriously, and they were following the instructions and the guidance. and they were actually looking for guidance. And therefore, it worked, in a very nice way and in a very stunning way. When Quran takes a small group of people in the middle of nowhere who have no ingredients of power or strength or success, nothing. Illiterate, poor, tribes fighting each other all the time for silly issues and for survival. And then make these people leaders of a great civilization and leaders of great transformation of the world in one generation. That formula will work every time. There are people who will take the Quran in the same way and try to implement that model. Now we have not only the Quran like them, but we also have the model that works, which we can simulate it. We don't need to copy it as is, because things change, but we need to simulate it to our current situation and current times. And on top of that, we are in much better position than them. We have the means. Rasul ﷺ used to talk to someone. He has sometimes to travel or to walk long distances. Now we can talk to the world in the comfort of your living room from your cell phone. It's really we are in much better position to implement that model. What is lacking is that commitment and dedication and that seriousness with which we take the Quran. Now last time, after all these preparations, again, preparation comes in the form of rituals like sta'inu bis-sabri was-salat, character, do's and don'ts, tests, trials and tribulation, all of these to shape up the Muslim individual and the Muslim community. And now we come across something major, and that's an everlasting. Actually, even everything almost what we covered was an everlasting, because prayer is an everlasting tool. Patience is the same thing. All the halal and haram, the birr that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked us, defined it in the verse 177. That's what makes community strong, that solidarity, and removes, because when people are not left behind, I just heard one politician somewhere saying that when we take care of the poor in our countries, we actually reduce the bill on the government, because otherwise the consequences are much bigger if we leave those poor neighborhoods. Then there are crimes, and the people will drop out from school and unemployment, and so the bill is even much bigger than taking care of that early on. So that emphasis on charity in Islam and on solidarity with the cousins, with the neighbors, with the orphans, the people who are poor, and now we come through another major thing, which is the fasting. Actually, fasting, the importance of fasting in Islam cannot be overestimated. Fasting in Islam that month, I think the closest description I can find to it is the 1 month that the team stands before the season. Usually, teams before the season, they go for closed camp or training camp, and it takes them from really very poor shape, usually because many of them, like they become loose during summer, and then they take that 3 weeks or a month, and then they become much ready, prepared for the season. Fasting has the same role for us. It's a one concentrated month of worship and dedication that makes you much stronger. It's a very effective tool of preparing the individual and the Muslim community for that mission, and it is reoccurring once every year. Once a year, people go through that month of intensive training that should prepare them for the job. And prayer can be seen as a tool of maintenance throughout the year, but the fasting is actually it's basically an overhaul. It's like you do checkup. You go to the doctor or the clinic and do a checkup, and they take care of several things. Fasting is meant to be like that. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. And we will know down the road why fasting and Hajj and Zakat, all these were prescribed just before the Battle of Badr. So people were asked about seek help in prayer and patience and then fast. And then you know how hard that region of the world is. And then all of these things leading all the way to be ready to put your life on the line to fulfill the purpose of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if it is necessary. So all you who believe, again, that's always been the title with which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala invites. That's like the third title. And to make it easy on them to do what they're going to be asked to do. You who believe fasting is prescribed for you as it was prescribed for those before you, so that you may be mindful of Allah. لعلكم تتقون. Remember, the fundamental verse was in Surah Al-Baqarah. يا أيها الناس اعبدوا ربكم الذي خلقكم والذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. If you're taking notes, it's Al-Baqarah 21. Baqarah 21 was mentioning that ibadah, worship, is meant to increase your God consciousness or your taqwa, your mindfulness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this time was mentioned about fasting in particular. And we will see it is mentioned about Hajj. It is mentioned about Salah. إن الصلاة تنهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر. How Salah keeps you from committing, doing which is wrong. Why? Because it strengthens your brakes. It strengthens your ability to restrain yourself. That's taqwa. That's a major aspect of taqwa. So fasting was prescribed on you. So ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, it's always again the preferred title. It's when you want to ask your child to do something, you start in a good way. وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثَلُ الْأَعْلَى. And then to make it easy on them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how merciful. كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ. So, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا first. And then this prescribed on you as it was prescribed on people before you. And to make it easier on them to accept something that Allah knows it's in our best interest. And Allah does not need to try to make it easy. But subhanAllah, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does this with us, with His creation, a lot of times we don't do it even with each other. إذا أردت أن تطاع فأمر بالمطاع. When you want people to do something, try to be gentle and try to be nice and try to make it easier on them to do and not cornering them. I saw a lot of parents making it harder on their children to do what they are supposed to do because of the way they approach them, the wrong way. كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. Three things in a very short verse. One, يا أيها الذين آمنوا. That's why I'm telling you this, because you believe. What does it mean you believe? You believe that whatever comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in your best interest. And you pledge to follow whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will tell you. That's how Allah keep reminding them of يا أيها الذين آمنوا. It's like you already pledged to do anything that you're going to be asked to do. You made that commitment. And you believe that you have full trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He will not ask you except something that is in your best interest. And He will never forbid something except that it is bad and harmful for you. So that's the meaning of Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, all the time. Just to remind them. And then, كما كتب على الذين, as it was prescribed before you, on the people before you. So you're not the first one who are asked to be fasting or to fast. The people, and then the purpose of it, it's not punishment. That's so that you increase your taqwa. You committed to a mission. That mission is huge, and I'm telling you to do this because that can help you becoming more prepared and more ready for that mission. It's like your coach or your teacher giving you big homework or a lot of work to do, and you know, if you have that good relationship with them, you know that they are doing this in your best interest because you committed, you want to win in the competition, so you're going to have to work hard and to follow what I'm telling you to do because you know that your coach or your teacher wants you to succeed. And because your success is their success also. In this case, you know that Allah loves the best for you and wants the best for you and knows what is best for you, so you will accept it and without any hesitation or reluctance. But on top of this, Allah is making it easier for you, reminding you that you made the pledge and the commitment and the belief, reminding you that He will do only things that are beneficial for you in this life and in the hereafter, reminding you that this fasting was prescribed on people before you, and then reminding you that it is the purpose of it is to increase your taqwa. So let's cover the verses and then we'll stop and reflect more on fasting. أياما معدودات فمن كان منكم مريضا أو على سفر فعدة. By the way, this taqwa, it's not the way many people understand it in that very passive way. So the profile of somebody who is pious for many Muslims is someone who really isolated and is not engaged and always in the masjid, etc. It's not the meaning of taqwa, by the way. That's not even the model of Rasul or the model of Sahaba. They used to do that at night. But during the day, there were people who are on a mission. So the meaning of taqwa has to be fixed in our mind. Taqwa is to be really eager and willing to do what you are supposed to do in every context. In every context, you ask yourself, what is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants me or expect me to do in this context, and you do it. It's not necessarily choosing. Like, okay, I find dhikr and fasting and prayer is more convenient, so I'm going to do more of this. I'm not going to be engaged in da'wah or reform or amr ma'ruf or nahy an munkar or something. I'm going to replace it with more prayer and more Quran and more dhikr. No, it's not up to you. It's not a matter of convenience. It's a matter of doing what you are supposed to do in that context. What is where Allah expects you to be, what Allah expects you to be doing. And then, again, making it easier for them and helping them accepting. This is not easy. Those of you who have been in that part of the world, they know that especially in summer and I think most of the year, it's so hot here. That and things, if you leave something on your car, it can melt. أياما معدودات فمن كان منكم مريضا أو على سفر فعدة من أيام أخر وعلى الذين يطيقونه فدية طعام مسكين فمن تطوع خيرا فهو خير له وأن تصوموا خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون. This last piece of the verse, I'm going to spend some time on it because this is something nowadays doctors are repeating it everywhere. There is tremendous literatures and videos about fasting coming from non-Muslim doctors, intermittent fasting, dry fasting, saying, I mean, this can regenerate your cells and can take care of free radicals in your body and free your body to do some maintenance work and heal the inflammation. It's amazing. I encourage you to go and search and read or watch videos about experts talking about the importance of fasting and what does it do. It's the fasting the 2/3 of the day or more, 16 hours or more, and it's simply amazing. وَأَن تَصُومُوا خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ إِن كُنتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. So the verse says, for a specific number of days. So again, to ease things for them. It's just, every time we go through something, as long as it is limited in time, we find it easier to accept it. We have a problem with things that will last for a long time, but if it is for a limited time, we can swallow it for a specific number of days. But if one of you is ill or on a journey, so before even you ask, how about if I'm ill or I'm in a journey? Quran is telling you, if one of you is ill or in a journey, he should fast on other days later. He should make up for those days. So you don't fast in Ramadan and you make up for those days later. For those who can fast only with extreme difficulty, these are the old people who are not, there is little hope of cure or recovery, and if they fast, it's going to be like a hardship for them with extreme difficulty. There is a way to compensate. Feed a needy person. But if anyone does good of his own accord, it is better for him. So, مَنْ تَطَوَّعَ خَيْرًا فَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَهُ. It can be understood that the more you feed, the more miskin you feed, the better. And, or, as the next verse will say, fasting is better if you can. Always fasting is the better choice. And fasting is better for you if only you knew. So something that was mentioned at that time, hundreds of years ago, only very recently, it became so widespread that doctors nowadays prescribe fasting for healing. I mean, as a part of treatment. Again, it does a number of things that can happen only through fasting. Only when you are fasting, your body can do. And part of it is to recycle dead cells and malfunctioning cells and sick cells. The body will eat them up and will use their ingredients as like proteins and as ingredients. It's like self-healing. Autophage, I think something like this it's called. So again, the mercy of the general rule in Islam, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. Allah will never ask you to do more than what you can. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا ما أتاها. Allah will not ask you to do more than what you are capable, what you can do with the resources He has given you. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا ما أتاها. So again, those who cannot, those who are still normally healthy, but they happen to be sick at the time of traveling, they don't need to fast, and they can make up later. Those who can fast, but with extreme difficulty, and there is no hope or little hope in recovery or for their situation, their health situation to improve, they can feed someone for every day, or you can feed more. That's فَمَنْ تَطَوَّعَ خَيْرًا فَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَهُ. That's the rule in Islam all the time. There is a minimum, and then it encourages you to do as much as you can, and encourage people to compete actually. Who can do better? لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا. So وَأَن تَصُومُوا خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ إِن كُنتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. I think now we can understand that verse in a probably more clearer way than the companions, even though the companions did not need to the scientific discovery, because their trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is unshakable, and they have no doubt whatsoever that everything that is coming from Allah is good. So they will do it with no hesitation and with no reluctance. But nowadays things even were confirmed that وَأَن تَصُومُوا خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ إِن كُنتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس. وَبَيِّنَاتٍ مِنَ الْهُدَى وَالْفُرْقَانِ. So let's take this verse in pieces. It's a long verse. شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان. So it tells you what's the role of the Quran. Guidance. هدى للناس. Quran هدى للناس. It was in the month of Ramadan that the Quran was revealed as guidance for mankind. Clear messages giving guidance and distinguishing between right and wrong. So Quran is meant to be guidance, meaning telling you, showing you the way, but also بينات من الهدى والفرقان. What's بينات من الهدى والفرقان? It equips you with the ability to distinguish between what is good and what is bad, what is right and what is wrong, even if it is not explicitly mentioned in the Quran. If you really know the Quran very well, you will develop that ability of ijtihad, which is that even if something that just came up was not there before and was not mentioned explicit in the Quran, you can tell with that background that this is really consistent with the guidance of the Quran or is not consistent. So the word Furqan is another description of the Quran, and it plays that role, which is to help you distinguishing right from wrong and truth from falsehood. And one of the biggest mistakes, and we made many of them in our history, was to create a clergy in Islam and make ijtihad is just only for certain type of people or class of people called scholars. These are the only one who can and should and are supposed to study the Quran and to make ijtihad. And for us, we just follow. That's terribly wrong, totally wrong. Ijtihad is the duty and the duty for every believer, and it is doable for every believer. Every believer should and can be part of this thing called ijtihad, which is how can we dig out more of guidance from the Quran. Now, we just distinguish between ijtihad and fatwa. Now, fatwa is a specific ruling that requires more comprehensive knowledge so that the scholar or the person can apply all of this knowledge on that particular case and issue the fatwa. But ijtihad, which means to reflect and contemplate and ask questions and engage in discussion about the meaning of verses and about our mission and how can we fulfill it, and about the goals of Islam, the overarching goals of Islam, maqasid, and how can we achieve them, etc. That's something that is the duty of every Muslim, and every Muslim should and can be part of it. So Quran, hudan linnas, guidance, وَبَيِّنَاتٍ مِنَ الْهُدَى وَالْفُرْقَانِ. Quran is meant to give you the compass so that you can tell. You can, forget about fatwa in a specific case, but in general, if you have reasonable amount of knowledge and reflection, if you're doing this exercise of reflecting and studying the Quran, you will develop a peaceful level of that ability of distinguishing. You may not reach the point where you can give fatwa for people for a specific case to say halal or haram, but you reach a point where you have a better understanding of this world and a better understanding of your mission and better understanding of what you are supposed to do and what is expected and about the essence of this deen. And we abandon the essence of the deen and we get busy with the rituals, and we have seen the verse was clear. ليس البر أن تولوا وجوهكم قبل المشرق والمغرب. Bir and goodness is not about rituals, is not about appearance. It's much bigger than that and much more. Quran is much more profound than that. It's about pledging to strive in this life, to be all you can be. That's what makes Allah pleased with you, and to maximize your positive impact and your contribution to the greater good. And that's what brings you closer and closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what this deen in a nutshell is about. So you pledge and you commit to strive all your life to get closer and closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by doing what? By working on yourself to be all you can be and leverage the potential that Allah has given you, and by engaging to make this and to maximize your positive impact on people and your greater contribution or your contribution to the greater good. فمن شهد منكم الشهر فليصم ومن كان مريضا أو على سفر فعدة من أيام أخرى. Now it may seem as a repetition, but no, it is not. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is explaining it in the next verse. يريد الله بكم اليسر ولا يريد بكم العسر ولتكملوا العدة ولتكبروا الله على ما هداكم وَلَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ. Just for those who are following, doing verse 185 in Baqarah. So if you have like translation, you can do translation also. It was in the month of Ramadan that Quran was revealed as guidance for mankind, clear messages giving guidance and distinguishing between right and wrong. So any one of you who is present that month should fast. And anyone who is ill or in a journey should make up for the lost days by fasting on other days later. Allah wants ease for you, not hardship. That's very important. Allah wants ease for you, not hardship. He wants you to complete the prescribed period and to glorify Him for having guided you so that you may be thankful. It's really amazing. So again, if you are traveling or you are ill, you make up for those days. By the way, one of the things that tells you that fasting in most Muslim countries and cultures is taken more as a habit, not as a worship, that people do not use that permission. I know that people, we are loose in many things, but when it comes to fasting, people can be suffering in travel and sick, and the doctor tells them that you should not be fasting, and yet they still fast. Why? Because it's not a matter of worship, it's a habit. It's a habit that they have been doing for so long, and it's hard to change it. Because the same person may not be as pious and in other aspects. So it's not like a measure of piety, it's by habit. Like for 20 years or 25 years or 15 or 10 years, I never missed a day. You want me now to miss a day? No, I'm not. But if you take it as worship, then it shouldn't be a problem. It's an act of worship, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving you that permission. And especially if it is detrimental to your health, then there is no point. You may be actually committing a sin by fasting. يريد الله بكم اليسر ولا يريد بكم العسر. This is something that I think we should be writing it somewhere and putting it always like hanging somewhere, because we need to be reminded all the time that Allah wants ease for you, not hardship. Because a lot of time what we go through in this life, or the things that Allah has prescribed on us, they may look hard. They may seem to be hard, and the other path may seem to be easier. We sometimes may be tempted to look at other people and say, and envy them because they just do whatever they want and they're not bound by all these restrictions in Islam. They don't have to pray 5 times, and that's not true. If you really understand, and we're all going to understand, we're all going to realize this on the day of judgment, that Allah really wants ease, not hardship, for us, with everything He's telling us to do. Even eventually making all the sacrifices and even putting your life on the line, it's still, if you see the whole package, this life and the hereafter, you know that everything that Allah asked you to do is something that is good for you. because Allah wants you to be happy and to succeed in this life and in the hereafter. He has no other purpose. We're not doing him a favor. He's in free of all needs. So everything that he's asking us to do is for that reason. So remember this verse. It's a part of the verse. So we're talking about 5-6 words. يريد الله بكم اليسر or 7 ولا يريد بكم العسر ولتكملوا العدة ولتكبروا الله على ما هداكم ولعلكم تشكرون. So you should be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this. So it's not really punishment. It's really now we know that it is a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He gave us this great month. And so Allah wants you to finish the month. تكمل عدته ولتكبروا الله على ما هداكم ولعلكم تشكرون. So that's why we celebrate on the Eid day with takbir, تكبروا الله على ما هداكم ولعلكم تشكرون. And those of us who really perform fasting Ramadan the way they should, they actually miss Ramadan. Towards the end, they start feeling bad that it is leaving. Of course, we're not talking about those who take it as a habit and as a burden. These will be counting the days and the hours until it is over. But if we really know what Ramadan is all about and we do it the way we're supposed to do, it's actually the other way around. Then you realize what's the meaning of how you thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this. Thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for asking you to fast in Ramadan and to spend those 16 hours or 15 or whatever hours not eating and not drinking. And then in the middle of the verses about Ramadan comes the verse about dua, and that's a big subject. وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا لِي وَلْيُؤْمِنُوا بِي لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْشُدُونَ. That's wonderful. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Prophet, if my servants ask you about me, I'm near. I respond to those who call me, so let them respond to me and believe in me so that they may be guided. Again, the purpose is for them to be guided. لعلكم تتقون and now لعلهم يرشدون. It's the same. So this is an invitation for us to make dua. This verse, you can read it. You know, when you get an invitation for a wedding or an invitation for an occasion, this is an invitation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for us to make dua. So it's وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ. Probably some of you know that the eloquence here, that it starts normally in the Arabic language, it should be وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي and فَقُلْ لَهُمْ وَلَا أَنْبِئْهُمْ وَلَا أَخْبِرْهُمْ إِنِّي قَرِيبٌ, because he was talking to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But then he switched to talk to us directly. فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. So there is no tell them. That was removed. If they ask you about me, and then Allah start talking to us directly, that I'm near. It was the peace that will tell them that the peace of, if they ask you, then tell them or inform them that I'm near, that peace was removed. Just for Allah, that's part of the eloquence of the Quran, to tell us how close Allah is to you. And it's also the beauty of this deen, that you don't need an intermediate between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wherever you are, you can worship Allah. Wherever you are, you can ask Allah. And keep in mind something, even though this is an invitation, but when people invite you and you don't come, they sometimes become angry, or they don't like it and they feel offended. وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثَلُ الْأَعْلَى. If you don't ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah does not like it. So if you don't ask, if you don't make supplication, if you don't make dua, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not like it. وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا لِي وَلْيُؤْمِنُوا بِي لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْشُدُونَ. Another tool in our hand is the dua, that we are not really leveraging it because of a lot of misconceptions. Like sometimes I become very amazed on the opportunities for us to make dua that we are not using them. Dua basically is putting your needs before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I mean, what is better than this? What's a better opportunity than this? Imagine someone who's very rich or very powerful, and you have an opportunity to meet that person and to ask them. And they tell you that this person is very generous and usually does not turn people down, etc. I mean, how do you see that opportunity? وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثَلُ الْأَعْلَى. We have that opportunity not only 5 times a day during prayer, we have it 24/7. And not many people take advantage of it, and that's bad. A lot of people don't make dua at all, only very rarely. And those who do, they don't do it properly. They do it without the presence of the heart. They do it without confidence. It just becomes like formality and just throwing these supplications, almost certain that they're not going to be answered. So what's the point? That's not the proper way. So many people don't do it. It's like our relationship with the Quran. Same thing, our relationship with the dua. Supplication, very powerful tool in our hand. I spend a few khutbahs talking about dua and tawakkul, putting your trust in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and making supplications as very powerful tools. If we just are aware of the power they give us and use them properly, they can make a huge difference in our life. And then some fiqh. أُحِلَّ لَكُمْ لَيْلَةَ الصِّيَامِ الرَّفَثُ إِلَى نِسَائِكُمْ هُنَّ لِبَاسٌ لَكُمْ وَأَنْتُمْ لِبَاسٌ لَهُنَّ عَلِمَ اللَّهُ أَنَّكُمْ كُنْتُمْ تَخْتَانُونَ أَنفُسَكُمْ فَتَابَ عَلَيْكُمْ وَعَفَى عَنْكُمْ فَالْآنَ بَاشِرُهُنَّ وَابْتَغُوا مَا كَتَبَ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ وَكُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَكُمُ الْخَيْطُ الْأَبْيَضُ مِنَ الْخَيْطِ الْأَسْوَدِ مِنَ الْفَجْرِ ثُمَّ أَتِمُّوا الصِّيَامَ إِلَى اللَّيْلِ وَلَا تُبَاشِرُوهُنَّ وَأَنْتُمْ عَاكِفُونَ في المساجد تلك حدود الله فلا تقربوها كذلك يبين الله آياته للناس لعلهم يتقون. This is about ruling about you are permitted to lie with your wives during the night of the fast. They are clothes as garments to you as you are to them. Allah was aware that you were betraying yourselves, so He turned you to you in mercy and pardoned you. Now you can lie with them, seek what Allah has ordained for you. Okay, let's eat and drink until the white thread of down becomes distinct from the black, until down. Then fast until nightfall. Do not lie with them during the nights of your devotional retreat in the mosques, i'tikaf. These are the bounds set by Allah, so do not go near them. In this way, Allah makes His messages clear to people that they may guard themselves against doing wrong. All right, what's the story here? In the early days, in the beginning, it was not husbands and wives are not allowed to have intimate relationship during the night, in Ramadan, even during the night after Isha. And when they sleep, if they wake up during the night, they are not allowed to have it. And it was clear, was difficult for the companions. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling them that He removed that restriction to them. So now it is permissible between iftar and imsak, or between breaking your fast and dawn. So, and then telling us fasting is between those times. And then if you decide to make i'tikaf, to retreat in the mosque, then the intimate relationship is not allowed, because basically i'tikaf means like retreating completely from life for a few days. And so that's and then تلك حدود الله فلا تقربوها. Beautiful. Quran sometimes tells us about the boundary, not boundaries. What's the exact word? The bounds or the limits. Quran sometimes says تلك حدود الله فلا تعتدوها. Do not cross it. Now it says do not even go near to it. And that's the proper attitude of a believer, and that's very consistent with the atmosphere of fasting and i'tikaf, etc. So it's not only you don't cross the limits, you don't even go near to them. So تلك حدود الله فلا تقربوها. And then comes back, why all of this? كذلك يبين الله آياته للناس لعلهم يتقون. It's amazing. Verse 183 to 187. It starts with fasting prescribed لعلكم تتقون. So that this is meant to make you more pious and a better person. Of course, more pious meaning what? More pious means better character, means more spiritually vibrant, more honest, more have stronger ability to restrain yourself. That's all of this comes under taqwa. It's a very beautiful word and very loaded. Taqwa means basically increasing your taqwa means becoming a better person and improving everything that you're doing. And that's what Allah wants you to do. So لعلكم تتقون. And then لعلكم تشكرون. By doing this, you thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Remember, I said that the best form of worship is the one that is based on love and gratitude. What do I mean by that? You love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you want to express that love, and then Allah will tell you this is how you do it. By praying, by doing this. You are so grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you feel that Allah has given you so much and you are indebted and you want to express that. It's like someone who saved your life or someone who did a huge favor to you, and you always want to find a way to express that and to return that favor. Of course, there is nothing that you can do to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enough for all that He has given you. وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا. Never mind to really express enough appreciation or to be grateful enough for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So لَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ. There are people who are looking for the path of taqwa, and Quran is talking to them. There are people who are looking for ways to express their gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Quran is telling them that's how you do it. There are people who are looking for the path لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْشُدُونَ. So fasting لَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَّقُونَ. وَلِتُكْمِلَ الْعِدَّةَ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ. You complete the fasting so that you express your gratitude to Allah. And then you make dua, why? لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْشُدُونَ. And remember that out of all the dua that we can and we be making, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala selected that particular dua in Surah Al-Fatiha to be repeated several times. That's not optional. So you may make dua, extra dua, or you may not, but you have several times a day, even if you're praying only fard, even if you're doing only the must prayers, the obligatory prayer, you're going to end up with several times asking for اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. And you can see how Islam always guarantees that you do the minimum. So the minimum of fasting is Ramadan. The minimum of prayers is the 5 times prayer. The minimum of dua is that dua that you do in every rak'ah when you recite Fatiha. So we started with لعلكم تتقون, and then لعلكم تشكرون, and then لعلهم يرشدون, and now back when concluded the verse about fasting, لَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَّقُونَ. It's all about you becoming closer to Allah, more pious, better person, stronger ability to restrain yourself, and better prepared for that mission, and therefore have a better chance to succeed in this life and in the hereafter. And all of this is meant in that piety. You will find happiness that you will not find it even if you have tens of billions of dollars. Even if you are the richest person in the world, there is a type of happiness that you find it only by getting near and close to Allah and by discharging your duty, by fulfilling, by getting close to the point that you believe that you can stand before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and say, I did everything I can. I did not spare any effort. The closer you get to that point, the more you will feel and experience some sort of happiness that nothing in the world can bring you that happiness. Nothing in the world. And that's why it's not like I'm not encouraging people to be poor or to fail in this life. You know, my position on that, I always tell Muslims that they should compete to be the best, to be the strongest, the most successful, the richest, and they'll have with the most power, most power and influence, and use that to advance the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to help people, of course. And then comes a verse that I consider very fundamental. وَلَا تَأْكُلُوا أَمْوَالَكُمْ بَيْنَكُمْ بِالْبَاطِلِ وَتُدْلُوا بِهَا إِلَى الْحُكَّامِ لِتَأْكُلُوا فَرِيقًا مِنْ أَمْوَالِ النَّاسِ بِالْإِثْمِ وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. This is a verse that can solve not only the problems of most Muslim society, but the problems of the world. This is one of the major reasons, source of trouble in the world. What does it say? Do not consume your property wrongfully. Do not earn money the wrong way, nor use it to bribe judges or rulers, intending sinfully and knowingly to consume parts of other people's properties. I'm sure some of you who are following politics have heard a lot of time in this country about campaign finance reform, basically to limit the role of money in politics. If you want to, there are many sources, many reasons of why there is so much trouble in the world. But if you want to point to one of them, it's probably this one. It is this vicious cycle of people earning money the wrong way, and then use that money to bribe decision makers and politicians and leaders so that they can earn more money and lawful money or the wrong way. It is this vicious cycle that is probably the main, or at least one of the main reasons why we have so much trouble in the world. And because this violates a golden rule in Islam when it comes to money, كَيْ لَا يَكُونَ دُولَةً بَيْنَ الْأَغْنِيَاءِ مِنْكُمْ. Quran tells us that you can structure your economy the way you want. There is no economic system in Islam. There is no political system in Islam. There are political principles and there are economic principles. It's all about justice and fairness and transparency and accountability and equal opportunity and etc. But there is no particular system. But there is a compass. There is what is this compass when it comes to business and the economy? It is so that money or wealth does not accumulate in the hands of the few. كَيْ لَا يَكُونَ دُولَةً بَيْنَ الْأَغْنِيَاءِ مِنْكُمْ. Of course, there are things that you have to do, like zakat, for example, and miras, which is the inheritance and the way it is distributed, that can help always spreading wealth. These are mechanisms that can help spreading wealth. And, of course, government can impose taxes to do that. But bottom line, you should not allow money to accumulate in the hands of the few. And some of you might be aware of the statistics, or they can pull statistics, that whether it is in the United States, whether it is in many countries in the world, or in the world at large, is a very small percentage of people who have the biggest chunk of the wealth in this world. And wealth disparity is causing a lot of problems everywhere in the world, and is really not sustainable. I mean, and we, remember that the happiest societies in the world are the ones where wealth disparity is the least, is the smallest, is that there is a minimum of dignified life that is guaranteed for people, and therefore there is no such great wealth disparity. Now this is happening everywhere in the world, almost, with different levels. In some parts of the world it's worse than others. In this country they try to regulate it. They try to be transparent when it comes to donating money to campaigns and candidates, etc. Of course, nobody gives money for just fi sabilillah. I mean, those who support political parties and candidates, they get back more than what they spent. And unfortunately, politicians will not return that from their own pockets. They will return from your pocket. They will return by policies and rules, regulations, or things that will put more money in the pockets of people who supported them or financed their campaigns. I remember, I think, George Bush, when he was still contemplating to ask his son George W. Bush to run, Bush, the father, he gathered some of his friends, on a golf game, and then telling that we were contemplating or were considering to ask the kid to run. They said that in that small gathering, and we're still contemplating, there is $100 million. I mean, who's going to compete with that? What kind of competition is this? So this role of money in politics is corruption. And you know what they say a lot about our democracy here? Say it's $1, one vote, politicians for hire, legalized bribery, they call it. Legalized bribery, it's a bribery, but it is legal. So Quran established this very long time ago, that it's a vicious cycle. People earn money that doesn't belong to them unlawfully, and to protect that, they pay to the politicians and to decision makers so that they can protect that money, and so that they can earn more money that doesn't belong to them. So it's amazing. I love this verse. ولا تأكلوا أموالكم بينكم بالباطل وتدلوا بها إلى الحكام لتأكلوا فريقا من أموال الناس بالإثم وأنتم تعلمون. If there is a mechanism in the world that is accumulating wealth in the hands of the few, it's this mechanism. It's this vicious cycle that keeps running forever. You get more money in unlawful way. You protect it by supporting and financing political parties and politicians, and then you get more of it. Unfortunately, that's the kind of democracy that they are bringing to the Muslim world. It's very unfortunate. After the Arab Spring, what's going on in Lebanon, and then after the Arab Spring, most of the countries that they got rid of the dictatorship, and that's good, but they ended up with this corrupt democracy, which is democracy without transparency, democracy without accountability, democracy without equal opportunity, democracy without fair competition. I don't know what kind of democracy is this. Democracy without social justice. And then worse, or behind all of this, is the suspicious financing of politicians and political party, and that marriage between money and politics. which always is very detrimental to the whole society. And so Quran established this very long time ago, and this is a verse that I recommend that all of you to memorize it, because that's a fundamental verse, foundational verse, and it is a principle. It's a principle that Islam established a long time ago, and it is something that wherever you are, you should be really fighting for, or advocating for or against, advocating for transparency. If there is no transparency in financing and no restriction in financing political parties and politicians, there will be no justice. Never will be any justice in the world. Because again, those who are spending, they are not spending as a charity. They can pay this money as a charity if they want, but they're spending it because to protect wealth that was earned unlawfully, and to get more of that wealth. And politicians again will return the favor from the pockets of the populations, from the pockets of the middle class and the citizens, not from their own pocket, of course. And the result is deterioration in the services, deterioration in the infrastructure, etc., because this will deprive government from money that they can use to reduce that wealth disparity and to provide better services to the people. Just one last verse, and then we'll stop, because this will tell us where all of this is leading. Hajj. One verse about Hajj, and also has taqwa. And لعلكم تفلحون. And let's start with that. يسألونك عن الأهلة قل هي مواقيت للناس والحج. وليس البر بأن تأتوا البيوت من ظهورها ولكن البر من اتقى. وأتوا البيوت من أبوابها واتقوا الله لعلكم تفلحون. This is trying to correct one of the habits that Quraysh and Arabs were doing during Hajj. They ask you about crescent moons, say they show the times appointed for people and for the pilgrimage. Goodness does not consist of entering houses by the back door. This is the custom of some Arabs on returning from pilgrimage, to enter their houses by the back door, considering this to be an act of piety. So that's just explanation. The truly good person is the one who is mindful of Allah. ولكن البر من اتقى. Mindful of Allah. Okay. The truly good person is the one who is mindful of Allah. So enter your houses by their main doors and be mindful of Allah so that you may prosper. So, and rules about Hajj, Prophet, they ask you about the crescent moons, tell them that these can help identifying the times and the seasons, especially for Hajj, and then fix this habit or custom of Arabs coming back from Hajj, entering from the back door of their houses and telling them that's ridiculous, silly, don't do that. And they was considering it as part of taqwa. And then re-emphasizing what it started with, which is ليس البر أن تولوا وجوهكم قبل المشرق والمغرب ولكن البر من آمن. That goodness is that believes that translates into that good deeds. Now it says ولكن البر من اتقى. It's about your heart, and it is about your pure and sound heart that results in that good character and exemplary behavior. واتقوا الله لعلكم تفلحون. So it's all back to taqwa and back to succeed. So just to tell you that in this few verses considered today, لعلكم تتقون, لعلكم تشكرون, لعلهم يرشدون, لعلهم يتقون, and now لعلكم تفلحون. It's amazing. These are 7 verses and 5 times 6 verses, 5 times reminding you that it's to be better person, to be more pious, to succeed, to be guided, to express the gratitude that you want to express, etc. So all of this is leading toward the verse that we'll come back to it, inshallah, unless we have time today, which also I consider a fundamental verse or foundational verse. And everything else about fighting, first of all these preparations is to reach a point where you are ready to put your life in the line if it is necessary for your deen. It's not like these ridiculous misconceptions there that about jihad and killing or violence or none of this. All of this is nonsense. It's about being ready to do everything to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even if it costs you your life. And cost you your life, it might be like, you pay your life as a price just because of sticking to your deen. And we had many cases like this in history. People did not fight or did not do anything, but they were killed or assassinated or tortured to death just because they were, insisted on sticking to their religion, or if it comes really to go out and fight. But the verse makes it very clear. وَقَاتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ first. So it's not like fighting for power or fighting فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. And فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ is very restricted on when you can do it and how you can do it. So all of this that everybody will say that I'm doing jihad, I'm going to this place or to that place, that's nonsense. That's ridiculous. We're talking about something that is very much restricted on when it can be done and how it should be done. And this verse, it summarizes it. That's why I love this verse in this, that everything else almost about qital is a detail compared to this verse. وَقَاتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. The purpose is فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. And of course, if it is فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ, then it has to be done according to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it permissible or lawful and within the restrictions and the limits. Fight whom? الَّذِينَ يُقَاتِلُونَكُمْ. Very clear. It's in self-defense. The people fight those who are fighting you. وَلَا تَعْتَدُوا. And do not exceed. Somebody is attacking you, you are able to push them back, that's it. You stop there. وَلَا تَعْتَدُوا. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ الْمُعْتَدِينَ. So I'm going to just read the translation and then leave some time for questions or comments, and we'll because there are a lot of verses about qital, and it's really worth spending time because there is a lot of misconception and confusion about this. Fight in Allah's cause against those who fight you. And we'll see, inshallah, more and more details later that it's not up to you to say, Lion, I'm fighting, Americans because their government is doing this and that. That's stupid. That's nonsense. وَقَاتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ الَّذِينَ يُقَاتِلُونَكُمْ وَلَا تَعْتَدُوا. But do not overstep the limits. Allah does not love those who overstep the limits. Of course, for believers, when we tell them that Allah does not love something, that's it. And nobody will even come close. So you don't start fighting, and then even you remember, the restrictions, and even if you respond, you don't respond in disproportionate way. That will make it an aggression, becomes atida. So it starts with fighting back those who are fighting you, but if you do it in disproportionate way, it becomes atida. وَلَا تَعْتَدُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ الْمُعْتَدِينَ. And inshallah we'll come back to this and talk about the verses in Baqarah and verses in other places about this very important topic that unfortunately was misused completely. and based on some interpretation of the verses and claiming that some verses were already superseded by others, or claiming that the Prophet used to go out and fight people and attack people, or based on what happened in history, which is history, just that it's not deen. I mean, whatever done, I'm not saying by the Umayyad Empire or Abbasi or Uthmani or no. Even by Khulafa al-Rashidin is not deen. Khulafa al-Rashidin were the closest, and during that time, the principle of Islam and the political principle of Islam were implemented, leadership by consent, transparency, accountability, everything, before we get that turning point, and we have that absolute power and inheritance. But even during the time of Khulafa al-Rashidin, whatever they did is not a religion. I mean, we cannot say because it is, then we need to do that. Why? Because revelation stopped with Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and everything that was done after that was ijtihad. And that ijtihad did not have the stamp. Quran was not revealed to tell us that this was. So we can debate it, we can say it was right, maybe all of it was right, but still it's not a deen. So those who say that Al-Fath al-Islami, Dawla al-Amawiyya, and Dawla al-Abbasi and the Uthmani and etc., and use that as a religion, and therefore that a Muslim should or are allowed to go out and attack people and take their wealth as a spoil, that's nonsense. That's nonsense. That's very contradictory with the essence of Islam and with the spirit of Islam and with the verse. لا إكراه في الدين ولا تعتدوا إن الله لا يحب المعتدين وقاتلوا في سبيل الله الذين يقاتلونكم. And we will see how even some contemporary scholars will confirm, mainstream scholars will tell you that Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam never went out to attack people who did not start hostility and attack people just to impose Islam on them or to take their wealth and their as a spoils of war. There is no such thing in Islam. So I'm going to stop here unless we have more time. And if you have any questions or comments, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Ghanouchi.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Can you explain the habit of Quraysh when and according to the ayah that says and يأتوا البيوت من ظهورها, what was the custom there, and what was
I mean, as you know, that then Hajj, there are number of deviations from the original pure Hajj that Arabs have introduced over the time, over the centuries, or they introduced a number of things. This is why it seems that one of those customs, besides they claim that you cannot make tawaf and hajj in the clothes with which that you traveled with or you brought, so you have to buy. It seems like a pure business trick, to purchase or buy special clothes from Mecca to make hajj with. This is one of those customs, and they used to be also doing tawaf naked in some cases. There are a number of deviations that were introduced, and this is one of them, which is seems that when they come back from Hajj to their houses, sometimes you have like a back door. So rather than entering their houses from the front door, they enter their house from the back door. And they think that, or they were claiming that this is to show piety. And Quran always is directing us away from these superficial things and these ridiculous things. That's not taqwa. Taqwa is something else. So birra min ittaqa. That's not goodness. So just is telling the companions, you don't need to follow this customs, just put it behind. That's nothing. So it's one of the bad customs that used to be practiced by Arabs about Hajj.
Jazakallah khair.
وإياكم إن شاء الله. Any other questions? Doesn't have to be questioning. If you have a reflection that you want to share, or you need to be more engaged. Otherwise, it becomes like one-way communication.
I do agree with that. So, assalamu alaikum. All right. So, just a comment, and to add in whatever previously said. I was reading an article today, and it was more about like ulama, or more like knowledgeable or mutaqqafun. And when we say ulama, I for some reason, and this is just something to share, like as we say, there is ulama salatin as well, not only for the religious reasons, but there is ulama salatin. And I never thought about it for some reason. Like there is a ulama salatin, which is really interesting, because ulama salatin tend to not criticize the government for whatever they're doing. They tend not to. They give them like a little bit of like an edge, and how dangerous that can be. They give them a little bit of an edge so they can they have some follow up, but in the meantime they cannot just criticize left and right the government for what they need. And I really think that this is what happens. It's like, in addition to what's going on in the world, and especially in the Muslim world, in addition to that is the ulama, or the knowledgeable people, and their way of standing against the wrong and non-justice things that's happening around the Muslim world, and from their leadership. Another thing is like, and this is more like an argument somehow, because maybe I'm misunderstanding this, and I'm not misunderstanding this because I just want to argue now. It's like you said about al-Futuhat al-Islamiyya. Al-Futuhat al-Islamiyya, it happened from the beginning of Islam, regardless of what. We cannot argue that. I don't know what other things and how we can call those. Yes, maybe it took a large part of the history, but there is some details about those Futuhat that we cannot argue and say that because Muslims asked people to pay taxes to protect them. They wrote agreements with the people in Medina who non-Muslims, just to protect Muslims and to protect the Medina, and especially because they were weak during that time too. But there was different situations that I really am excited to hear from you and see how you want to call it and how you're going to explain those, because it didn't happen after the Khilafah or after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It happened during his life. It happened during the Khilafah, during like Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. He went against the people who came out of Islam. Umar ibn al-Khattab, there was big futuhat during his time, and what we call those.
Well, Jazakallah khair, Brother Muhammad. Very, very big topics, both of them. So let's start with the first one. Second, I may say a couple of things about it, and because that's we're going to come back to it, this futuhat. But for the scholars, this agreements or this cooperation or whatever you call it between the clergy and the politicians, which happened in Europe before and they got rid of it. Unfortunately, it happened throughout the history of the Muslims, which is, it's worse than what you mentioned. It's not like giving them fatwa that, there are scholars giving religious scholars giving the political leaders interpretation that is convenient for them. They went even further than that. They made up hadith on behalf of the Prophet to satisfy that are convenient for them. They interpreted verses in a way that is convenient for the ruler. I mean, a big chunk of the hadith that was narrated on Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam were not only weak, they were just made up. There is a lot of them that were simply made up. And of course, one can only praise the work of Bukhari and Muslim, who scrutinized those millions of hadith or hundreds of thousands or whatever, and came up with a list. Of course, it's not perfect. And even that, the list has still to be scrutinized, not only on the chain of narration, but also the content itself, especially if it contradicts clear principles in Islam. Because no matter how good the research work that was done by Bukhari and Muslim, it's not perfect. It's still a human effort. And it's not 100%. It can be 90, can be 95%, can be 98%. But it still has to be scrutinized. And one of the biggest mistakes that we made is that when we thought that every hadith that is in Bukhari or Muslim must be authentic, never mind the other books, because the other books are full of hadith that are made up. Part of it is because of that idea that scholars, rulers want something, and the scholars are there either to give it to them in the form of fatwa or interpretation, tafsir of the verse, or even, I'm not saying scholars, but some people were ready to even make up a hadith. And that's always bad. That's until now we see it, that one main reason why Muslims had to go through all that history and until this situation now, they are where they are now, is because of the abuse of religion by political leaders that is made possible by the establishment, the religious establishment. Now, for the futuhat or the conquest is a big issue, and it really requires time. I don't know whether we have enough time or we don't. Number of things have to be sorted out. First of all, Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam never attacked people out of the blue, like with no provocation, with nothing. So giving yourself the right to go and attack any other country now, or even in history, is not a religion. Is not a deen. It's a political decision. We can discuss as a political decision. And for example, the decision by Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu to fight those who refuse to pay zakat, never mind even choose to abandon Islam. If we discussed politically, it was the right thing to do. I mean, the U.S. government will do the same thing if there is a country or a city that refuses to pay taxes. It's a very, very common sense, very good political decision. But we cannot rely on something done by a Khalifa and use it as a religion. It's not a deen. It's something, I mean, I can tell you that I agree with almost everything done by Abu Bakr as-Siddiq or Umar al-Khattab, etc., or with everything. But it doesn't make it a religion. decision by Abu Bakr Siddiq or Umar al-Khattab to go for conquest of Persia or the Eastern Roman Empire, etc. I mean, we can discuss it politically. At that time, was it the right thing to do? Maybe it was like preemptive war. We can decide it politically, but we cannot make it as a religion. We cannot say that Muslims nowadays, tomorrow, they have a state or they have a country or they have the power, so they have to or they are allowed to go and start attacking other countries because that's part of Futuhat or jihad. I mean, if you allow that, then you should not complain about the Crusades. Yeah. I mean, if this is right, then that one becomes right also, and you should not complain about colonization. That people who colonize just go and occupy countries again. So we have really to sort out what is religion, what is history, and what is political decision. Every decision that was taken by the Khulafa al-Rashidin, the rulers who came after the Prophet ﷺ, we can discuss it in that context. It might be the right thing to do, but we cannot say because it was done by Abu Bakr as-Siddiq or Umar al-Khattab, then we can do it now. Things have changed completely. There is a world order nowadays. There is agreements between countries. There is a constitution that rules there is something that is nation state is well established. And people like citizens are living together, bound by that constitution. Countries nowadays have also a relationship and they're bound by some agreements and they have to honor them. Yeah. It's not like because you are weak, then you can accept the situation, and the moment you become strong and you start attacking people left and right, saying this is jihad and then no. And this is a big topic, unfortunately. It's full of misconception, misinterpretation of verses, relying on a hadith that are not authentic, misinterpretation of political decision and making them religious decisions. And keep in mind those futuhat, especially in the time after the Khulafa al-Rashidin, these were pure conquest wars between empires, between dynasties, because many of the rulers of Dawla al-Amawiyya and Abbasiyya and Uthman who waged those wars were not very pious. I mean, they read about their life in their castles, etc., and the way they manage money and they rule and their human rights records, etc. It was not really an ideal, so that they claim that they are doing this fi sabilillah. They are sending people to fight in other countries just for fi sabilillah. There is a big question mark on that. And regardless of the intention, which we have no way to know or to judge, at the end of the day, there is nothing in Islam that allows people jihad al-talab. I think Dr. Yusuf Qaradawi, I need to look for that in his book about jihad. He said there is no jihad talab in Islam. There is no such thing as Muslim go out and attack others in the name of Islam.
For the class. My question is, how do you explain to someone who asks, how do you understand the chronology and the sequence of Quran? Because the verses are arranged in such a way that the mix of events, of topics, of stories. So if you like listening to you can relate, like there is a connection. But for someone who doesn't maybe understand it, how do you explain the wisdom behind that?
It's nowadays they tell us that in teaching that the best way to teach is to diversify the way you teach and to use different approaches so that you keep the attention of people. I believe this is something applied by the Quran, is switching subject or approaches, talking in indirect way and then direct, is meant to keep you alert and attentive so that it doesn't become really like a monotone and where you... so I believe Quran is doing that by reading it, and every now and then you get awakened by a verse. And Quran does this with great harmony. So even though there is change of subject from scenes of the Day of Judgment to stories of the people before us to do's and don'ts and etc., and you think that no, there is harmony and there is a coherence and there is great eloquence. Of course, Quran is the standard for eloquence, for balagha. Yeah. But I find that, and as I said, they teach it now. They instruct teachers to not to be monotone, is to change ways and tools in teaching to keep the attention of the student. I believe Quran is doing that, and it is our job to study it so that we can find that link and that connection between the verses, that these were not randomly put, like Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam used to tell the people who write the Quran where to put every verse in.
Thank you so much. Jazakallah khair.
There are no more questions, so we'll stop here. And inshallah, we'll come back next Sunday to talk about this big topic and try to gather also verses from other places, because we really need to get to the bottom of this and sort out jihad, which is striving, doing your best, from qital, which is fighting, and then what are the restrictions and the limits, so that we try really to be very clear and not to be intimidated by those radical groups. This is our religion and we should not allow it to be hijacked. And they call us whatever they call us. I mean, we're just going to have to be brave to say it as is. This is our religion. It's not a religion of fighting. Fighting is not a principle in Islam. It is permissible within a limit and under certain conditions, and it is in retaliation and self-defense, and should not exceed the limit. And we'll talk about restrictions, not only when you can do it, but also how it can be done. And you will find that, probably to the surprise of many, that there are many more restrictions for fighting in Islam than for what is accepted today as a just war by international law, and what is accepted as just war. We will find that there are more restrictions in Islam on when you can do it and how you can conduct it. All right, Jazakumullah khair.
جزاك الله خير. السلام عليكم دكتور.
عليكم السلام.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. جزاك الله خير.